Living the Science of Mind, page 23. Let God do it. In the Colorado Rockies, there's a beautiful valley from which many fountains gush forth. Each fountain is different. More water comes from some than from others, but there is only one body of water at a deep subterranean level which flows through each of them. Each fountain is supplied from this body of water, and the water that gushes through each has a pressure within itself that causes it to flow upward with an irresistible force. This may be likened to our own spiritual natures. We, as individuals, each have our own thoughts, feelings, hopes, aspirations, and desires, and each is directly and intimately connected with the one divine life, energy, and power. Each of us is a fountain of life. There is a God pressure back of each one of us, a life force seeking an outlet through our thoughts and acts. There are many fountains, many individuals, but only one God pressure back of all. One of the most remarkable sayings of Jesus was that he of himself could do nothing. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Could we not say of each fountain up there in the Rockies that the fountain of itself could do nothing because it is merely an outlet for the pressure back of it? Let us personalize these fountains and give to each the power to block the flow of water through it. One fountain might say, well, I don't know whether there is a water enough. I am not quite certain that I am an outlet for this great ocean of water. I am not even certain that I believe there is enough pressure in it to keep on flowing. Perhaps it will stop tomorrow. Another fountain might say, I am so confused over everything. I am so uncertain about everything that I have come to the point where I really don't know what's going to happen. And another fountain might be so filled with fear and distrust that it would block its own channel. While still another might get jealous of the other fountains and gradually come to hate them. Let us make believe that these mental attitudes of the fountains could actually stop the flow of water through them. Would that not be about the way all of us are at times? We become so frustrated with our little thoughts and fears and doubts that it makes it impossible for us to let God flow through us with the joy of life. Our problem is not with God, who is the river of life. It is not with the divine pressure that seeks to express itself through us. Our trouble is with ourselves. Each one of us is an inlet to the divine, but because we are individuals, we can inhibit its flow. We can block it or squeeze it down to a small volume or even stop it. Or by opening up all the channels of faith and conviction and hope, we can increase its flow. When the natural joy of life is unblocked, it will flow freely through us, and we shall become whole and happy. But doubt, fear, uncertainty, anxiety, and a sense of insecurity can so congest our mental life that nothing good can get through. We are born with a natural desire to express life, but almost from birth, certain factors have entered our experiences which have tended to congest the flow until finally it has almost stopped. We are trying to be fountains all on our own, not realizing that each one is rooted in God, that there is a power greater than we are, a pressure against our lives from a divine source, which is self-acting. When Jesus said that a power greater than he was operating through him, he knew exactly what he was talking about. And because he kept the passageway of his own thought clear, this power was able to work through him. Jesus never made any complicated statements. His words were simple and direct. He said, there is a fountain of life from which your life is drawn. And if you will unstop everything in your mind that congests this fountain, you will be whole. This was the foundation of his teaching. Clear your mind of everything that doubts the existence of God. Live as though love were the great reality. Bless and curse not, and then accept and let. Let us use another illustration from nature and think of a great body of water up in the mountains. It is our desire to use this body of water to irrigate the valleys. We have learned that by a natural pressure within itself, what we call gravitational force, this water will flow from the high mountaintops down into the valley. But we have met with certain obstructions. There are hills and perhaps mountains in the way. In the early days, when they brought water down into Rome, they built long channels around the mountainside. This was done with terrific labor. And then there came a time when someone discovered that water, by its own pressure, will reach its own level. They discovered that if they would connect a pipe with this high level, they could run water down through the valleys and up over the other mountains and hills. And provided they never tried to make the water go higher than its source, they could deliver it anywhere and in complete volume. But there is something else we should remember about bringing water down from the high mountaintops. No matter how large the source, the flow to any particular spot is limited to the size of the pipe through which it flows. If it is a 1-inch pipe, we shall have a 1-inch flow of water. If it is a 10-inch pipe, we shall be able to deliver a 10-inch flow wherever we want to use it. But in no instance do we force the water down. We neither push it, nor pull it, nor draw it. It furnishes its own pressure. But suppose someday we go out to open the head gate through which the water flows and no water comes. What do we do then? Do we sit down and bemoan our fate? Do we lament and beat our breast and say, "Woe is me"? Do we say, "Perhaps God doesn't want us to have water today"? Or do we question whether or not the water is withholding itself from us? We do none of these things. We realize that somewhere the pipe is blocked, and so we follow it back and discover that sand has gotten into it, or mud or silt. We clean out the debris, and at once the flow resumes. The flow did not stop of itself. It was stopped because of something got in its way. But we were able to remove the obstruction. We did this definitely and deliberately. We knew what we were doing and how to do it. We were complying with the natural law. And when we let the law have its way, everything was all right. This is pretty much what happens in our lives when they are unhappy and incomplete. Somewhere we have stopped the flow. The water is still up there in the mountains. The pipe is in its place, but somewhere something has gotten into this pipe that does not belong there. So we turn on the faucet and nothing happens. Well, there is no use sitting around bemoaning our fate. It is time for us to do something about it. It is time for us to follow the pipeline of our own existence back to its source, to find out what blocks it and to loose it, to free it, that the flow may resume. It is time for us to let God do it. But before God can do it, we must clear our minds of everything that hinders its doing. We must keep the pipeline open and let the water of life flow down into our living. And remembering that everything in our thinking that is unlike our highest concept of good will clog the pipes, we must look to ourselves and be honest. If we find anything in our thinking that denies life, let us clear it away. We can stop being afraid if we want to. We can stop having resentments. We can at once stop all unkindness, winnow out every doubt, and gain faith through the simple practice of learning to believe. Here is where faith and patience and the will to try and keep on trying must be used. One can say to oneself every day, "I am a fountain of life, and the living waters of God flow through me." One can say to oneself, "I will express joy today. I will be happy. I will bring gladness and enthusiasm into every experience of my life. I will maintain a quiet confidence and peace and a sense of serenity, and I will be glad for the achievement of others and rejoice in their success." One can learn to love people if one wishes to. It is this kind of thinking that irrigates the dry places of life and brings laughter and joy into everything we do. It can bring health and freedom in place of sickness and bondage. It can bring abundance and prosperity where there might have been impoverishments. But there is one thing we must remember. It is not enough to know that the pipeline of our existence begins way up there in the high mountaintops into which the hand of God is pouring the eternal waters of life. For this is our inlet to the divine. The inlet is forever established. We have to be certain that we are an outlet to it. And it is only as the other end of the pipe is kept open that the water flows. This is why Jesus told us that we must forgive if we would be forgiven. We must love if we would be loved. We must make others happy if we would be happy ourselves. We must give if we would receive. Sometimes we hug our little good too closely to ourselves, not being willing to cast it on the four winds of heaven, lest it will not return. But Jesus said the very act of giving will at the same time bring to us a receiving, good measure, pressed down and shaken together and running over, he called it. It is the one who gives the most who gets the most. And so let us learn to draw the divine substance down into our own lives. And as freely as it has been given to us, let us give it to others. Thus alone shall we be made whole.